Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last day of what's known as Pension Awareness Week. If you weren't aware yourself, this is an industry-wise initiative once a year where all sorts of parties in the pensions industry try to reach out to members to try and engage with them concerning pensions. So this is the last official day, and we thought what better way during Pension Awareness Week than to run a webinar sort of primarily focusing on your annual benefit statement, which you should have received from Lothian Pension Fund by now. So welcome to this webinar entitled "What Does Your Pension Statement Tell You?" My name's Jonathan Kempson. I'm one of the workplace implementation managers at ABC Wise, and prior to joining them in 2018, I was 20 years the man from the Pru. And as you know, in Lothian Pension Fund, Prudential is one of the AVC providers, additional voluntary contributions. And of course, what your respective employers, well, i.e. Edinburgh City Council, have done is introduce the latest version of AVCs to these things called salary sacrifice shared cost AVCs, or shared cost AVCs for short. We will touch on those, but we want to primarily focus on the annual benefit statement which you will have received. So some housekeeping before we go any further. Everything we're going to be telling you today is factual information only, doesn't constitute financial advice, and everything's based upon our current understanding of taxation, legislation, and scheme rules. What are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to firstly focus on your LGPS statement, or your annual benefit statement, which you'll have received from Lothian Pension Fund. And whilst there's an awful lot of information on that document, and what we're not going to do, let's be very clear about this, we're not going to go through it root and branch, every box, this is what this box means, this is what that box means. It's all in there for technical reasons to give you the breakdown, but some of the key things essentially which you just want to focus on in terms of the headlines from your statement is, overall, given your history, what are you going to get and when, really? So the grand total boxes are the key things. If you want the breakdown, it's absolutely there for you, but focusing on what do those boxes actually mean, and when, of course, because as we all know, there have been changes to the local government pension scheme. And then if your plans are that maybe you don't want to go through to your normal pension age, maybe you are trying to go earlier than that, of course your annual benefit statement doesn't show you that, you're very likely to have a need to do some additional saving. Even those of you who are going through to normal pension age, there's often still a need to consider additional saving for retirement, and especially since the efficiency of the options you've got make them very attractive from a tax angle to invest in these things. So we will touch on the in-house options as well. So without further ado, let's go straight into the annual benefit statement. Now, there are lots of different formats. Different pension funds have different designs, graphics and all the rest of it, but the bottom line is, when you boil it down at the end of the day, the first thing which a pension statement will do is lift the bonnet as at the 31st of March, and of course the most recent one, 31st of March 2021, and tell you, given your history, how much your pension's worth at a snapshot on that date. Now, that is obviously dependent upon how long you've been there and what your salary is, so whatever that number is, that is saying, look, all of you have been in the career average section now for a number of years, and the next slide we're going to do a summary on how it's changed in Scotland in recent years. But all of you are in this career average section there, so you'll have so much built up there. And then if you've been around before that career average section, you'll also have membership in the former final salary sections as well. That number, that current pension number, reflects all of that. But of course, it doesn't actually mean that you could have actually retired on the 31st of March 2021. And even if you were eligible to, that doesn't mean that's the number you'd have got. Why? Because currently, the spectrum for you to take your LGPS pension is between 55 and 75. Okay, so that's when you can access pensions under normal health. And within that spectrum, you will have your normal pension age. And as I'm sure you're aware, the goalpost moved when the career average section was introduced, because now your normal pension age is the higher 65 or your state pension age. And of course, your state pension age depends upon your date of birth. So that might not be 65, it might be 66, 67 plus. Yeah. But essentially, your current pension is a snapshot of what you've got on the 31st of March 2021. It assumes that you were technically eligible to take it, but it takes no account of any reductions, because you know that if you take your pension off your own back before your normal pension age, there will be reductions. So what I'm trying to say is a temperature check that number. It doesn't technically mean that's the exact amount you could have got on the 31st of March 2021, because you might have not even been age 55 at that date. And if you were, there'd also be lots of reductions on that number as well. But at least it gives you an idea, yeah, thus far what your membership has accrued. What it then does is it projects it forward to that normal pension age, to your state pension age. Now, that might not be when you want to retire. That's another matter entirely. But at least it will take that number, roll it up on your current hours. But again, the assumption is that your salary doesn't change between now and your normal pension age. So what that means for you, if you're nowhere near your normal pension age at the moment, you are going to take that number with a pinch of salt, because the hope and ambition, of course, is that my pay is going to go up between now and when I actually get to my retirement. This rather simply or crudely just assumes level pay between now and normal pension age. I mean, if you are relatively close to your normal pension age, then it's not going to be a million miles out, I'd suggest, because normally speaking, there's not a great sort of fluctuation as one gets closer to retirement. But that's the assumption on the projected pension. So just to sort of summarize how it's changed in Scotland, of course, is that all of you, with effect from the 1st of April 2015, doesn't matter how long you've been in LGPS, all of you from that date forward were put into this thing called the Career Average Revalued Earnings Scheme, the CARE scheme as it's known. Well, how does that work? Well, I get my salary, whatever that is each year. 1/49th of that salary is what I built up as a sort of guaranteed pension for my future retirement. 1/49th is quite a big slice of the pension's cake. But of course, you then bank that, you move on to the next year, whether you get a pay award or not, it's 1/49th of the salary the following year. So as the years go by, you're sort of chalking up these different sort of 1/49ths. They do actually revalue that by CPI, Consumers Price Index. That's only right and proper. Otherwise, inflation would have a corrosive effect on it. And tell you what, given what's happening with inflation at the moment, those of you who've been watching the news, reading the papers there, we've got a bit of a problem in the short term at the moment in the UK, because we've got inflationary pressures coming. I think the headline rate went up to it's just under 3.5%. Bank of England base rate target is 2%. And it's quite likely that inflation is going to run hot for the rest of the year. We'll have a bigger issue if it perhaps longer term inflation stays at that level. I don't know if you've tried to fill up your car recently with fuel, or your electricity provider might have written to you as well. You kind of know that certain things are actually shooting up at the moment. So you'd be really pleased to know that your LGPS pension in your retirement does retain this link to inflation, to CPI. Never has been more important to have something which has a link to inflation, as we see what's going on at the moment. Anyway, you'll build up these 49ths. You'll have so many of those revalued. That'll give you your pension at retirement. And remember, the normal pension age moving forward now is the higher of 65 or your state pension age. Now, of course, a lot of you will have membership previously in the earlier final salary sections of LGPS. So between April 09 up to the 31st of March 2015, then you will be a member of the former final salary section of LGPS. And those are what we call the 60th years. So, how it works is that if you'd worked 1 year full time, you'd have built up 1/60th of whatever your final salary is going to be. Now, the good news is they don't freeze that final salary as at the 31st of March 2015. It's still your final salary now when you retire in the future. But what is technically frozen are the number of years and days you built up over that 6-year period. So, as I said, if you're full time over that period, then you've built up 6/60ths of whatever your final salary is. If you were part time for whatever reason, they will have pro-rated down the number of years and days membership, but they will multiply it by the full time equivalent salary of your position. So that's about giving you pension. And then, of course, there'll be a number of you who've got membership prior to that as well. So if you're in LGPS before the 31st of March 2009, then you've also got benefits in the another final salary section, which were known as the 80th years. So, of course, 80ths aren't quite as generous as 60ths. But same principle applies. If I work 1 year full time, I've got 1/80th of whatever my final salary is, prorated down if I'm part time. That gives me my pension. But crucially, additionally, this is also shown on your annual benefits statement, you'd have built up some automatic tax-free cash. Okay, so that's when it says lump sum, automatic lump sum. It's talking about whatever you've built up under the 80th scheme. Now, if you've joined, obviously, after April 2009 onwards, and that's your first membership of LGPS, then guess what? That box in your annual benefit statement is going to be 0. There's no automatic tax-free cash for you. Now, that's not to say you can't have cash, because we're going to go and talk about this now, because you can take up to 25%. But essentially, on your annual benefit statement, what it's doing is it's giving you all the breakdown. Sometimes members say, "What on earth do all these boxes mean?" Look, you don't really need to worry about any of that. You just need to understand the grand total. But what it will do is it will give you that breakdown with all the numbers as to, well, this is what you got in the 80th scheme, this is what you got in the 60th, and this is what you got in the care scheme as well. And it's all added up, the bits of the jigsaw, to give you the grand total, both where you're at as at the 31st of March 2021, but also, if all things being even, you carried on until your normal pension age. So, lump sum, if you've got something in the 80th years, you'll have a current lump sum or automatic lump sum in the box there. They'll project that through then to your normal pension age. And what additionally the pension statement will do is it'll also tell you about, well, when you get to your retirement, look, you can take up to 25% of it back as tax-free cash if you want. And it will then show you what that 25% number could be. So in this particular case, someone can have 61.5 grand out as tax-free cash. But then what it then does is it cancels the relevant amount of pension to get to that 25% number, including any automatic lump sum if you've got it. So in other words, it would damage the pension to do that. Now, of course, sometimes members look at that statement and say, well, that looks good. I can have 60-odd grand out as tax-free cash. But then, of course, recognise you're going to sort of damage your pension to do so. And you've got to look at your own numbers to work out whether you think that's the right thing for you. Certainly, that ability to take your pension at retirement, and basically the deal is every pound you give up, you exchange or commute it, and every pound you give up, they give you £12 in tax-free cash. Now, up to this maximum of this 25%, which is the total you can take tax-free. I think what some members might overlook is that some people might just see the big number and say, right, well, that looks great, I'm just going to do that. But what you've got to think about is thinking about your average life expectancy. Now, of course, none of us know how long we're going to live, but this is the sort of crux of it, really. Every pound of LGPS income you get is worth its weight in gold. Why? Because it's guaranteed income for life. So if you live to 100, they're going to keep on paying that money to you. Yeah, it's never going to run out. But for me, here's the additional jewel in the crown with the LGPS income. It's index linked. And I was just talking to you about inflation and what's happening at the moment. And we've got no idea how long that inflation is going to run hot. Hopefully not too long, because that's going to damage markets and all the rest of it. But the bottom line is that £1 would have gone up, each year in your retirement. And if you factor that out over an average life expectancy, well, was that the right thing for me to take that quick win to get more tax-free cash out? Well, it very much depends upon your own life expectancy and what you personally need the money for. And this is where the savvy LGPS member comes in. And the savvy LGPS member is saying, well, hold on a minute, I see a great tax planning opportunity here. Because if I put some of my hard-earned money into these things called shared cost ABCs, these pots of money, which I can build up on the side with the PRU. I know you've got Standard Life, but I don't think they're actually accepting shared cost ABC contributions at the moment for Lothian Pension Fund. So basically your option is with the PRU at the moment. But if you build up one of these pots, you get to retirement, whenever that is, you cash out your main LGPS. So long as your PRU pot, whatever the value of that fund is, fits inside the 25% limit, hey, you can have it all back as tax-free cash. And that, pension schemes which allow you to do that, pay in an extra pot and you get it all back tax-free, they're as rare as hen's teeth. You're the only public sector scheme where you can do this. So a word to the savvy, embrace shared cost ABCs, because what you could then do when you see this is say, well, hold on a minute, I'm going to preserve that index linked income because I recognize how valuable that stuff is at the moment, but I still want to grow my wealth for my retirement. You can do that with shared cost ABCs. Let's have a quick look at a sort of case study to try and sort of bring it to life. Well, actually, before I go into that, let's just see. I think, Tim, did we have a question come in, actually, just before I go any further?
Yeah, there is one question, but it's about additional payments as you can increase pensions. So I think we'll probably cover that, and I'll ask the question at the end, maybe.
Yeah, okay, yeah, no worries. Yeah, we are going to get to that very, very shortly, actually, because we'll look at all the options, not just shared cost ABCs. Before we do that, then, let's just have a look at this, a quick sort of case study. So we've got Sarah, a couple of facts we're going to assume about Sarah. Number one, her normal pension age is 67, given her date of birth. When she gets there, she's on just over £29,300. What Lothian Pension Fund would then do is, well, we know those hard facts. When did she join? Well, got 1 year in the 80th scheme to keep it simple. That's a bit of pension. There is a little bit of a lump sum as well. That number will come up in a moment. 1 year in the 80th, the full 6 years under the 60th scheme. So she must have been full time. That's another £3,100 odd on the pension. And then in a forward looking statement, if she got the bulk of her LGPS membership under the care scheme, 18 years there. So we're talking about what, 25 years. Service, and then ends up on just over 29 odd grand a year. That gives you an annual pension just over £14,200 odd a year. Sarah, you get a little bit of an automatic lump sum, not much, because remember it's tied to the strength of your 80th membership, and she's only got 1 year in there. And then this annual benefit statement, this is your starting point for you to start planning for your retirement. Because what you're going to do is you're going to look at that and say, well, if this is Sarah, okay, well, being quite direct, is that enough? So I get to 67, that's what I'm going to get. Yes, I'm going to get my state pension on top, which is totally separate. Might be another 8 odd grand a year, maybe a bit more. Does that give me enough income for what I want to do? So, if any of you have ever gone through a financial advice process with a financial advisor, the way a good advisor would go about an advice process with you would be to firstly gather what I call the hard facts, how much and when. And then what they're going to do is they're going to say to you, well, okay, talk to me about your retirement. Tell me a bit about yourself. What do you like to do? Now that you're not working, paint a picture for me as to what that looks like. Okay, you like doing hobbies. Okay, what type of hobbies are those? What are the associated costs with those? Do you like traveling? I know, of course, recently we haven't been able to do a lot of that. But in an ideal world, what does that look like? Is that 1 holiday a year, 2 holidays? Where is that? What kind of budget are we looking at here? So what we're trying to do is overlay the hard facts, what I'm going to get, with what do we think you need for you to live a happy, reasonably comfortable retirement. And it all flows from your annual benefit statement. But of course, that's assuming Sarah wants to go through at 67. A lot of people I've met in my years of being in the pensions industry is saying, well, when do you want to retire? And more than most will say, well, before my state pension age, if I could afford to do it. Now, we know the numbers at 67. Never underestimate, if you're jumping off the boat early because you want to, for whatever reason that is, don't underestimate the damage it can do to your local government pension. Going 3 years early in Sarah's case, the pension could drop by, well, over a £4,000 hit on the pension. Why is it so harsh? Because it's a double whammy when you do it off your own back, because you're going to lose out on so many 49ths. But on top of that, there are going to be reductions because they weren't due to pay it out until you're 67. So, if you want this income at 64, Sarah, well, how about an annual income initially of £10,253 a year? So you're going to look even closer at these hard facts now, because again, what's your budget? What your plans for retirement? £10,200 odd pounds. If that's got to cover everything, heating, lighting, keeping a roof over your head, maybe running a car, after all of those those costs have gone, there's not an awful lot left in the tank, is there? I'd imagine, for retirement. Is Sarah single? Is she with someone else? Well, who knows? These are the kind of things you got to think about your own situation. And the bottom line is, because of that hit you're having to take, you're going to have an absolute need, or in vast majority of cases, you're going to need to do some additional planning. There are very, very few people these days who get to retirement and the first thing they do when they open their first pension payment is go, crumbs, look at that. How am I possibly going to spend all of that? I've got too much income in my retirement. For a lot of pensioners, is quite the opposite. It's the initial reaction as to what life looks like after work. So that leads us into, well, what are my options within LGPS to try and improve things if I want or need to? A couple of in-house options. First one, you can go back to the pension fund and buy these things called additional pension contributions. You used to, many years, be able to do these things called added years. In fact, we did have a webinar earlier today where we had someone who was actually doing added years, but they're few and far between, those contracts still in force there. The replacement for that was, rather than buying the service, you buy actual just physical blocks of money. You tell them initially how much you'd like to buy, up to a maximum just over £7,000 a year, and then they look at your age and your sex and say, well, how do you want to pay for this? Do you want to do a one-off lump sum, or more likely to spread the cost monthly through your pay slip? Over what period do you want us to spread that cost? And we'll give you a quote. And that quote is black and white. There's no negotiating about it. If you want to buy X amount of income from us, it's going to cost you Y. But in return for that, you'll get this guaranteed pension for life, and it will be index linked. You'll get tax relief on the cost of doing it if you're a taxpayer. As I said, it'll be index linked income. But some important points to note about this income: unlike your main scheme, this income will die with you. Main scheme stuff, then there's a survivor's pension built into it, so the other half can get up to 50% of the pension you were enjoying. That doesn't happen with APCs. And the other key thing is your employer will not contribute towards the cost of APCs. So with your normal main scheme stuff, you pay in a percentage, depends where you are on the pay scale, and your employer will, on average in the UK, it's about 19% of your salary your employer has to pay to the pension fund to support this guaranteed pension. There's none of that with APCs. You're on your own, but you get tax relief on it. So what that means is that when you get your calculator out to work out, well, how long have I got to live in my retirement now, to claw back the cost of me buying this guaranteed index-linked income, I need to stress it's an individual calculation in all of your cases, but it's probably going to be at least 15 odd years in retirement before you break even. So you're very much playing the long game. But it'd be the right option for those members who are completely risk averse and will want the guarantee come hell or high water of index-linked income. It's not very flexible though, because you're paying this contract. If you want to stop it at any time, you can. They'll pro-rata down whatever income you bought up to that point, but then if you want to restart it, it's a new contract, and then you're a bit older, and of course it's going to be a bit steeper, the line to buy the income as you get older. So those are APCs. So you don't get a huge number of members doing them because of the payback period and the fact that they're less flexible than certainly things like shared cost AVCs. And with that additional pot, as you say, you build up this pot, for a lot of you. Your exit strategy is, well, I'm just going to cash it out at the same time as my main scheme, and then as long as it fits in the 25%, I'll get it all back tax free. I mean, as I said, pay into a pension pot and get it all out as cash. That's almost unheard of. But as long as it's within the 25% limit, you can absolutely do that. It's in the rules and regs. No one tells you what to pay into that account. Look, it's your account, but members do really like that flexibility because cash flow can change. There'll be times when things are more affordable and less so. Minimum contribution, £2 a month. For some of you, you can pay up to 60% a month. And as you get close towards the end of the tax year, or people get close to retirement, maybe they've had an inheritance, maybe they're sitting on cash elsewhere, which is basically going backwards now with inflation where it is at the moment. Well, actually, what I want to do then is pay a bigger chunk of my salary into this, because that's going to be a far more effective yield on my money than just let it rot away. Now, of course, the reality is, though, it is tied up into a pension vehicle. Earliest access is 55. And if you want it all tax-free, you've got to take it at the same time as your main scheme. So just bear those things in mind. But hey, there's a huge amount of tax relief available for you. And whatever your marginal rate of tax is, you're going to get that at source. And of course, you're going to get national insurance savings. And recognise that the personal allowance, so if you've got personal allowance, this is the amount you can earn before you start paying income tax, that's now frozen for the next 5 years. What it means for any of us now, if we get any type of pay award in the next 5 years, we're going to pay more tax. It's a fact. And on top of that, we've got obviously plans for the national insurance to go up as well. And if that comes down the pipe next April, well, that's even more of a harsher tax burden which we have to face. So how do I shelter some of my hard-earned money from some of those direct headwinds? The answer is quite simple. You put it into a shared cost AVC. In terms of what it means for basic rate taxpayers, £100 a month into the account with Pru only costs you £68.12 off your net pay. I mean, the green arrow tells you exactly why. If you've got any spare money, you should be putting it into something like this vehicle, because it's not just tax, it's national insurance. Gives you a massive shot in the arm from the taxman. Yes, that money's then invested with Pru. Is it guaranteed? No, it's not. It could go up, it could go down. You could get less than what you put in. But Pru is going to have to do an appalling job with your money for it to be worth less than £68.12. So that's why people do it. Even if you're relatively close to retirement, we often get asked a question, well, I'm only a year or two off retirement, it's too late, there's no point doing this. No, you could be saving that in just 1 month. So someone who puts £1,000 in, if they're eligible to do that, it might only cost them as little as £680 to do it. How much tax do you want to save? This is about you being perfectly savvy, perfectly legitimate, and leveraging your LGPS membership through your career to put some more money in your pocket for your retirement. Lots of resources. If you're interested in these things, ABC wise, on our website, I've got the calculator, and it doesn't matter what rate of tax you pay or how close you're to retirement or not, because you can actually do a forecasting tool, whether that's months or years away. It can potentially roll up the pot of money to see what it's worth. But if you go onto the ABC Wise website, go on the calculator there, obviously make sure you're clicking the tab for Scottish rates of income tax, because obviously that's clearly different for England and Wales. punch in your salary. It'll then work out what the gross cost is, what the net cost is. Put in your tax code as well, actually. Even if you've got a non-standard tax code, it'll work it all out. Clever piece of kit, and it rolls up the pot, assuming 3% net of any annual management charges, because when you invest it with the Pru, they do deduct an annual management charge. 3% net growth, rolls it up for over what a period you want to put on there. So it gives you an idea as to what the pot could be worth. Other resources, webinars, we're going into a lot more detail about how this all works. The calculator just mentioned, we've got some bite-sized videos. Do have a look when you log into your ABC Wise account, frequently answer questions, A to Z of every question we've ever been asked around shared cost ABCs. In terms of main scheme information, look, if you want to find out more about how it all works, your main LGPS, pensions.gov.scot/local government, comprehensive stuff on LGPS. Everything you ever want to know about the local government pension scheme is there on that website. Now, what that's not going to do, though, is you're not going to go to that website because you've just got your annual benefit statement from Lothian and you think some of the numbers are wrong. So we had, again, someone yesterday who said, well, look, I think my final salary numbers are wrong because it's got a 0 from the 60th, but I was definitely in LGPS at that point in time. And if you think about it, okay, Lothian Pension Fund produce your annual benefit statement, but they rely on accurate and timely data being sent from your employer to the pension fund. And if for whatever reason there's something wrong with that data, then of course the annual benefit statement is going to be out. No surprises there. So what you need to do, if you've got any questions around, well, hold on, that number doesn't look right, or that period of service doesn't look right, you need to go back to Lothian Pension Fund. And the easiest way to do that is through your portal. So so that's on the next slide after this. I'll give you the link if you weren't already aware. Obviously, you can do self-service. You're going through Lothian Pension Fund, and that's where you're going to raise a query. So this website is more about the generic stuff, yeah? If you want to talk anything to do with shared cost ABCs, here at ABC Wise, we'd be delighted to talk to you. There are different ways you can chat to us: email, live chat. We do have a telephone help desk, yeah, our knowledge hub and our FAQ section as well. But of course, you're not getting in touch with ABC Wise if some of the numbers are out on your annual benefit statement, because we don't hold that data. That data is held by Lothian Pension Fund, so you need to talk to those guys. But anything to do with shared cost ABCs, we're very happy to have a chat to you about all of that. My Pension Online, so that's the link there. If you weren't already aware, I'm sure a lot of you are. That's how you log in Lothian Pension Fund into your account. That's where you'll have all various functionality to call up your annual benefit statement and then run estimates and things like that, and also raise queries if those numbers are out for whatever reason. And then lastly, the generic website for Scotland LGPS, which covers off how it's all made up and covers off every question you can ever ask about LGPS, is there detailed at the bottom as well. Okay, let's invite Tim in just to see whether we've had any further questions. Tim.
Yes, there's a couple actually. So Simon had asked a question about lump sum payments to increase the pension. Now, I don't think you actually mentioned lump sums as such, but you've obviously covered the options to pay the additional pension contributions or the AVCs. Simon, let me answer that question just by saying that these payments have to come from your salary. So particularly with AVCs, if what you mean by a lump sum payment is can you write us a check? No, you can't. But you could pay a significant amount out of your salary over a period of months, I guess. So hopefully that in some way, shape or form answers the question, John.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you can, if you're buying APCs, technically that can be done by a lump sum, but hey, you're going to have to write out a big check if you're paying for someone to give you guaranteed income for life in one payment. So that's the only exception where you can pay effectively a pension fund, a lump sum. You're absolutely right, Tim. For shared cost ABCs, you've got to pay a regular amount out of your salary. But what you can do, if you'd earmarked a certain amount to go into the shared cost ABC, you could burn at a higher rate for X number of months and then reduce it back down. So that's how you sort of indirectly get lump sums into shared cost ABCs.
Yeah, and look, we've been asked this question, many times over the years. When the light bulb goes on for people about ABCs. The ability to save tax and now national insurance, of course, and get it all back tax free. So if Simon's having that light bulb moment and thinking about the savings account that we all have that gets 0.1% or whatever it might be, you might be thinking, right, well, how could I use that money to get it into the ABC? So it can be done through salary, but for Simon and anyone else, actually, just get in touch with us and we can talk you through that. Dave has asked, can you contribute to share cost ABC if you pay additional years? Yes, Dave, is a simple answer to that one. Jonathan mentioned added years in passing earlier. If you can afford to pay both, you certainly can. Absolutely. Adele has, I have 2 pensions from previous jobs. Can they be transferred into LGPS or used to buy ABCs somehow? No, it can't be transferred into ABCs. The likely answer for the LGPS question, Adele, is probably no, because if you want to transfer other occupational schemes, Jonathan, and you generally have to do it within the first year of joining. So the first year of joining Edinburgh or Lothian Pension Fund, let's say. So it's probably a long-winded no.
It's but you're right, Tim. I mean, you don't have to have completed the transfer within 12 months of joining, but you've had to have started the process. So if you've been at Edinburgh for more than 12 months, then technically there is a discretion as to whether they'd allow the transfer in, but it had to be something pretty exceptional. So the answer is normally no.
Okay, that's fine. Kirsty has mentioned, right, I'm confused. Is AVC Wise run by Prudential or a separate company? She did an AVC as a teacher with Prudential. No, Kirsty, AVC Wise is not run by Prudential, nor do AVC Wise run your AVC, so to speak, because your AVC, if you've got one, the payments will continue to be invested by Prudential. Which is where Jonathan and I used to work. What AVC Wise do is we engage with your employer to give them the ability to set the AVC up on this salary sacrifice shared cost basis. So for Kirsty, you as a member and everyone else on the call today will benefit more because of what your employer's done for you. There's another question here. Dave is asking, what's the maximum salary contribution? Jonathan, can you pick that one up? Just point Dave towards the calculator and I'll read the other questions.
So there is a maximum contribution calculator on the AVC Wise website. If you have any difficulty locating that, then just give us a ring. But there are limits. You can't get rid of everything each month. At the top end, some members can pay broadly about 60% because you've got, as I said, you've got to leave enough in the tank to cover off the national minimum living wage requirement on a monthly basis. So it does sort of clip your wings a bit there. But have a look on our website, or if you've got any problems locating that, the easiest thing is just to give ABC Wise a ring, Dave.
There's a couple of people having to leave because we've run over, obviously, so that's fine. One last question from Shona. With low mortgage rates, it looks like share cost AVCs would be better use of any spare cash than early mortgage repayments. I suppose that's more of a statement than a question, Jonathan.
Well, I don't know. It probably is a question, but okay. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a question again that we've been asked over the years. When you have the ability to pay into a local government AVC that gives you great tax, and national insurance savings, and you have the ability to take that all back as tax-free cash. Could you use that tax-free cash to pay off the mortgage rather than?
I've known people who've done that. They've said, well, some people always remember someone who's paying 40% tax, and they were doing that, and overpaying on their mortgage, and they were an LGPS member for many years. And I said, well, hold on a minute, that's great, you're getting down that debt, but as you mentioned, interest rates are pretty cheap at the moment to actually borrow money. It's never been cheaper to borrow money at the moment. You're paying all this tax, you get that in your net pay, and then you overpay on your mortgage. So why are you doing that? When you could have actually done one of these things, save yourself a shed load of tax, and then use it as a tax-free lump sum at the point of retirement. Yes, you will have paid more interest by not overpaying on your mortgage, but actually when you crunch the numbers, in this particular person's case, it was blindingly obvious which was the more tax-efficient route to go down. Of course, just remember, though, that you're locking that money away until as early as 55. So remember, you're not going to put any money into this which you don't need access to, and there will be other sort of financial milestones or goals you've got when you map out your life. Scary thing to do, but you want to pinpoint on your timeline what are the key junctures where you may or may not need some money, and I'm sure there will be that before you get to retirement. So we're not saying people should just slavishly put everything into these things, because it's a compromise, but you recognize that the tax and the NI savings here, if you've got savings, as you were saying earlier, Tim, snoozing away, going backwards, and you don't need access to that money until you retire, well, why aren't you thinking outside the box about funding what could be some pretty chunky contributions in and effectively living off that pot? Because the yield you get from the HMRC on this is going to blow everything else out of the water.
Yep. Agreed. But again, for Sheena and anyone else, I would just have a conversation with us, and I think it's just about striking the right balance. I think every AVCs are for everybody, because you're probably all taxpayers. But what level of AVC? Well, that's up to yourselves. Just hopefully, Jonathan struck a chord today, and you now start thinking about it. But enough from me, Jonathan.
Right, enough there. Yeah,
well, I'm going to get a plane to fly to Edinburgh. So.
Oh, you are actually. Yes, you're going to pop over to Scotland yourself. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Look, I hope you got something out of this session, even if it's, look, I'm going to look at my annual benefit statement, understand those numbers, use that as a basis for me to start that sort of conversation with myself about, well, yeah, those are my numbers. If I go through to my normal pension age and didn't get a pay rise, well, how accurate is that? How far away? Do I want to go early? Have I jumped on to self-service and run some estimates as to what the cost is going early? Just be brutally honest with yourself. Have I done enough saving for my retirement? How tax efficient am I? If I'm paying a higher rate of tax, can I use these things to actually lower my tax burden and build up a nice pot, which I can then potentially take back tax free? So, it's all about this planning journey, and it all starts with your annual benefit statement. So, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon, and good afternoon.